Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining me. And this is my week one review of the Zoe test that I started a little over a week ago. And I'm not going to be talking about the first 7 days of the test. Now, as just a recap, if depending on whether you've been following my channel or not, you know that I had vertical sleeve gastrectomy surgery, a weight loss surgery, back on July 16th of 2020. My starting weight was 310 and a half pounds on July 2nd, 2020. On the day of surgery, I weighed 300 pounds. I'd lost about 10 and a half pounds prior to surgery. And today I'm weighing in at 199. So I've lost over 110 pounds since July 2nd of 2020. So it's been almost a year and 100 pounds, 110 pounds. And about 100 pounds since surgery, a little bit over that. And one of the things that I did when I decided to have this surgery is I decided to start researching why the surgery works, how I should be eating, and what I need to do after I have the surgery to be successful long term. And I'll admit, some of these things that I'm doing now, potentially, had I known this and applied this years ago, maybe I wouldn't have needed the surgery. I don't really know. It's hard to say because there are changes with the surgery that do things that are really kind of unexpected, like kind of change your taste in food to a certain extent for some people. Not everybody, but it's definitely affected me. I don't know how much of that was my intent to completely eat differently and potentially a change in how I feel, but definitely happened. I eat completely differently from what I did. I also started looking into the microbiome and gut health and what I can do to make sure that I don't regain the weight after I've lost it. It's very important to me because my quality of life has increased 1,000%. How do I protect that? What do I do to protect it? So I started looking into gut health, the microbiome, why the surgery works, and what makes us gain weight, what makes it difficult to diet and lose weight, and what keeps us going at a particular weight level, why that all happens. A lot of that ties back to our gut microbiome, the bacteria, and how this sort of symbiotic relationship inside our bodies deals with the foods and how we feed it. One of the people I started following early on in this was Dr. Tim Spector out of King's College London in the United Kingdom. Very well respected researcher, and a number of other people that I've followed from various places like Harvard, Stanford, and around the world, really, that are pioneers in the field of microbiome research, and started really digging into that. Well, Dr. Spector partnered with this tech company called Zoe to create these tests. And also, as part of the test, you can also take part in a continuing study called Predict. Some of the study information you can find online right now, the original Predict 1 study, they've released information about. It's really fascinating. There's the Predict 2 study that ended not too long ago. Some data will be forthcoming. And I'm partaking in the Predict 3 study as a part of this. So not only am I doing the testing, but I'm also participating in this nutritional study. And this review today is about my first week with that study. So let's take a look and see what went on during the week. So first thing I want to talk about is, who is Zoe? Zoe's a tech health company. It's not a person. I believe it's Greek for health or something like that. I could be completely wrong, but they're a tech company. The lead researcher is Dr. Tim Spector, and they're collaborating with a number of respected institutions and researchers at these institutions: Massachusetts General Hospital, Stanford Medicine, Harvard, and I had mentioned King's College in London as well. So it's not backed by the food conglomerates out there. It's not backed by pharmaceutical companies. This is really good independent research, which was really important to me when I was looking at potentially doing that. So what am I getting out of this? It's not free. It costs about $360 to get the tests. The being a part of the nutritional study is optional, but you can just do the tests and get feedback from that. But I also opted into helping out in this study, which is going to include about 12,000 people total in the Predict 3 study. So I'm one of them. And you get a test home kit where you test your stool sample for your microbiome. You send in a blood sample to test your fat metabolism, how well you metabolize fat. You have a food log. It's an app that you log the food. You're not tracking calories or macros or anything like that. It's just what you eat. Everything gets photographed. They do have a database in there, so you can scan barcodes for different food elements and put it in there, and it recognizes it, or you can search for the food. But you're not actually entering calories or anything like that. It's just the food, and which has been pretty easy. The one downside is it's kind of tricky with recipes, but you can get it all in there. It's just a little time consuming. And then you get some personalized food recommendations out of that and reports and things like that. So the detailed reports that you get your sensitivity to dietary inflammation, scores for the meals you ate during the test, how well they aligned with your body processes. You get a microbiome health score, the prevalence of good gut bacteria and bad gut bacteria. You get a list of personalized sort of gut boosters, foods that you can eat to enhance those healthy gut bugs that you need, maybe the ones that you're lacking, and other foods that actually suppress some of the bad gut bugs in there. You get a 4-week plan to reduce dietary inflammation and improve gut health. And the cool thing is really no food is off limits, right? It's all good. But obviously some is more recommended than others, but you actually get a list of food combinations that help minimize maybe some of the more unhealthy or reactive foods that you might eat. So maybe you do have something that's off list, but there are things you can do to minimize those effects. And some of that's being revealed as I go through this test, especially the second week. So after we review this first week, come back in another week for this week 2 review. There's going to be a lot of information that we talk about. It's going to be really cool. All right. So week 1, day 1 and 2. So on day 1, I started tracking food, but it was the first day that I applied the glucose monitor. Here it is, still there, hasn't fallen off. It's nice and secure, no issues at all. And it takes a while for the monitor to calibrate. So I really wasn't tracking things as far as the glucose monitor goes the first day. Day 2, I continued to log food. There weren't really any experiments on day 1 or 2. Day 2, I did take my stool sample, and that was pretty interesting. But they give you a little kit. It's very clean, sanitary way to do it, and got that off in the mail. So I got the stool sample done. And on this day, you can see that I got a little slightly hypoglycemic in the night. Got down to 62. That's probably not a big deal. It's something I'm going to monitor, talk to my physician about it. Not overly concerned. Some people do get down. I mean, considering that I was diabetic a year ago, it's pretty amazing that I'm talking about hypoglycemia at this point. And that as we look through this first week, you can see that my blood sugars never really get that high. For a non-diabetic person, you expect after you eat to generally keep things below 140, and that's where most things have been. It's kind of crazy. A few exceptions to that, but for the most part, pretty normal blood sugars, nothing too extreme. but we'll see some of that fluctuation, which has been really an eye-opener as we move along. So here we see day 2. I started logging food, and I think it's interesting to point out here, right here, if you see my, oops, well, now I've got to go back. Get my laser pointer. There we go, right here. So you can see right there, I had some oat pancakes. These were homemade. I ground the whole oats and everything, but boy howdy, that gave me a bit of a spike. It really went up and came down pretty fast. And while I think it's not bad that my body metabolized that sugar and got me back down to a normal range pretty quickly, that can also kind of, when it happens that fast, that can potentially cause sort of this energy flux and lethargy in the other end. Now, I didn't dip down really super low, but it did come down and then come back up a little bit. So there was that. One of the things that I thought was interesting, if you watched a recent video, I made a recent video on my version of fried rice with that, which actually uses quinoa, and you can see that right here, not a whole lot of effect. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Like it kept it below 100 on my glucose, which is, I thought, was pretty amazing. And which it was, I mean, it's packed full of vegetables, it's packed with quinoa, that kind of thing, so pretty low. Protein bar that had a couple of grams of sugar gave me a little spike. And then on the end here, I had some meatless tacos with some cassava root, taco shells, and a little bit of cheese. And that thing went up, but then again, but not very high. I mean, still under 130. So nothing too crazy there at all. On day 4, this is oops. Let's go back to day 3. There we go. I missed day 3. So here on day 3, this is when I started some of the set experiments. And I had some specific muffins to eat on the first day for breakfast and for lunch. So I had the 3 Zoe breakfast muffins for lunch. And if you look over here, you can see this gave me a pretty high spike. It got all the way up to like 151. So it got a pretty big spike. Those things were pretty packed with sugar. I got to say, it was a little brutal getting through those things. Like, it was not easy, but they were pretty, I mean, it not only filled me up, but they're just packed with sugar. And I've said this before, if you're considering this, you cannot do this right after surgery. And if you've had the bypass, I would probably not do it. Like, it's a lot of food and a lot of sugar to do once. You can probably swing it with the sleeve. It just depends, right? You really need to talk to your doctor. Really got to know yourself and what your limits are before doing anything like this. So just want to make sure that that's out there for you. I was able to deal with that fine. It was a little uncomfortable. I felt like crap after all the sugar. You can see down here, we got the second round of Zoe muffins for lunch. These didn't have quite as much sugar. They had a lot more fat. They were actually made to represent the standard American diet. And so that's what those are there for. And so a little bit of spike there. And then as we go through the day, whoa, we saw another big spike here. And I had a Beyond Burger with some potato fries that I fixed up in the air fryer. And that gave me a little bit of a spike there, up and then down. And you see this little gap down here. I went more than 8 hours without scanning my monitor. So there's a little gap there. I slept in a little bit too long before I scanned it, but we didn't miss anything. It was on its way down to sleep level, right? So didn't miss anything. So that was day 3. Kind of pretty interesting. Just to see the glucose reactions. And you can see that if you were consistently eating high sugar and a lot of carbs, starchy foods like potatoes and high sugar, how that would really keep your glucose up high. And this is what leads to insulin resistance and these dips and valleys that end up coming, making you hungry, eating more and more, and really is one of the main triggers to obesity is this high levels of glucose. So it's really interesting to see the food having its effect on my body here. So let's move on to day 4. So day 4, we'll go back over. You see, I've had another round of Zoe muffins for breakfast. Thank God that was the last round of Zoe muffins. But they weren't the worst tasting things I've ever eaten, but they were not. They were made for a purpose, not for beauty or taste, I think. And again, there was 2 of them, high sugar, and you can see it gave me a pretty big spike, up over 160, one of the highest spikes you'll see along this journey. And then after that, man, I was dying for some vegetables. You can see I had some carrots and hummus here. That doesn't do anything at all to my glucose. I had a few red grapes that had a little bit of bump, rose things up a little bit, and then a protein bar that had a couple of grams of sugar in it. Didn't do very much, a little bit over 100 now. And then I had the Beyond Burger again, exactly the same, man. I weighed everything, right? The burger had the same bun. I used a keto bun on both days. And lettuce, tomato, pickles, ketchup, mustard, all of it weighed exactly the same on both days. So these were identical burgers. The only thing different was the fries. So if we look at this a little bit more, so if you look at these side by side, the Beyond Burger with the fries here, you'll see that there's quite a bit of difference with the potatoes added to it. I mean, certainly could have been worse, right? It still didn't get above 140 for me. But it does show just the difference between potatoes and not having potatoes, about 15, I guess, in this case. So, and you have to take in mind that these are like bariatric sized things as far as post-surgery. It was not a lot of fries. It was a pretty small burger, weighed out and everything like that. It was the limit of what I could eat. Like, it was probably more than I normally would. But for the sake of science, this is what I did. It was a lot easier the second day because I didn't have the fries. But you can see that the difference those fries can make, in that really just the burger itself with the keto bun. Also keep that in mind. This was not a white bread bun. It was a keto bun. Fran's keto buns, really, really, really good. But I found that pretty interesting to actually see that difference. And we move on to day 5, and I had a little bit of a breakfast sandwich that morning. Didn't do a whole lot. It was a veggie sausage with egg and a cheese on a keto bun, again there. And then I had some steel cut oats. These were plain steel cut oats, nothing fancy. And just to see, what was going to happen. And you can see, again, not a huge spike, and it kind of very slowly went down back towards that 100 line. And then I had some veggie taco meat, same thing I had in the tacos previously, but on a little bed of quinoa, and you can see what that did. That wasn't part of any experiment or anything like that. It's just what I had for dinner. That's all that was, and that's what happened to it. Again, not a massive uptake. Definitely way below. I think it was right around 130, maybe even less than that. So in the 120s. So you see, not much going on there. And now we've got day 6, and you see in the morning, not much with my omelet that I had. I had an omelet with some roasted Brussels sprouts on the inside. That may sound gross to some of you, but it was actually really quite good. But because I'm sorry, but if you had my Brussels sprouts, if you don't love Brussels sprouts, you'd love them. That's all I got to say. So The next thing, you can see I had a little bit of yogurt. That was the Okios 000, and that doesn't do anything as far as a spike goes. In fact, after I ate it, my blood sugar kept on going down. Then I had whole rolled oats. And we'll look at this comparison here with the steel cut oats here in shortly, but you'll see how that really sent a pretty sharp spike up and then came down relatively quickly. And then, I had some cucumbers and hummus, or carrots, cucumbers, and hummus. And this, I do actually have a comparison for that coming up in the next day. A protein bar that didn't do anything, that had no sugar in it. And then I had chili with white rice. And look at that, right? Like it went way up, almost as much as the oats. But then look how long this stayed elevated. It stayed elevated quite a while, several hours before it started trailing off and got back down under 100. So that was pretty interesting that white rice, this was white rice, was really kept that elevation pretty high for quite a while. At least in me, and that's one thing to keep in mind is these are my reactions. And yeah, generally speaking, sugar, carbs are going to affect people very similarly, but some people may not react to white rice at all, right? Like it just might go up a little bit. So it wouldn't be very much of anything, but that's my reaction. So just bear that in mind. And so we're looking at day 7 here. I had an omelet today again, but it wasn't filled with Brussels sprouts. It was just chives and cheddar. Keys did nothing, right, for glucose, not really anything in there. And then I had a regular vanilla yogurt, a Chobani regular vanilla yogurt. Still no fat, but it had added sugar and that kind of stuff. Gave a little bit of an uptick, but not that much. Went back down. And then I had instant plain oats. Again, I'll show you these side by side shortly. But you see I had some instant plain oats, went up, went back down. And then I had carrots, cucumbers, and chickpeas, not hummus. And I'm not going to do a side by side with those, but you can see that did not get it as much. Now, hummus is really ground up chickpeas, right? And flavorings, and there isn't like added sugar or a bunch of other added carbs or anything to hummus. It's just ground up. And you see that, again, it's exact same weight of carrots, exact same number of cucumbers as far as weight goes, and an equal portion of chickpeas on both days, one in the form of hummus, one in whole chickpeas. And you see that you do not get the same response, even though the foods are practically identical, other than how they're prepared. So that's just kind of one of the interesting things. And then you'll see I had the exact same chili, exact same amount of chili, and brown rice instead of white rice today. And you'd say that it did not get up as high. It kind of leveled out and then came back down. And then you can see this little hump there, right there. That was some Haagen-Dazs regular ice cream. One of those little tiny one single serving cups that nobody thinks is a single serving, but really is. I think it's 3.6 fluid ounces. It's not very much, but I had that, a single serving of Haagen-Dazs, and that's what it did. Didn't do much. I was kind of shocked a little bit. Now, had I eaten a pint, might have been a different story. Didn't feel like doing that. I don't think I'll do that, but that was pretty interesting. So that's week 1. Okay, so I won't leave you hanging too long. I am going to talk a little bit about day 8 because I want you to see that ice cream difference. So we look at the day 8 chart. What is this? You'll have to find out in a week because that's part of week 2. But let's go, what is this and this? That's the mystery. I'll keep you hanging. Sorry. But I will talk about the ice cream. Here was the Halo Top, exactly the same amount, 3.6 fluid ounces. Didn't do anything. Didn't get me above 100. But really, the difference, I think I was at 96 here, and I actually ate it after that little peak. I don't even know why that little peak was. Probably just activity. Sometimes activity brings it up, brings your glucose up a little bit as your body gets to glucose for energy. And then I had that Halo Top, and things started going back down right after that. So basically did nothing, but the difference was only like 6 between the Haagen-Dazs regular ice cream and the Halo Top. So for me, at least in equal amounts, um, I guess it would be interesting to see if I ate a whole pint of Haagen-Dazs versus a whole pint of Halo Top. I'm pretty sure the Halo Top wouldn't do anything. It's sweetened with sugar, alcohol, and stevia. And I've had a lot of coffee over this first week that's been sweetened with stevia in between some of these tests, and it doesn't do anything for blood glucose. It does not change anything. If I'm going down, it'll still go down. Same thing with nut pods that I add to my coffee for as a creamer. Flat line, doesn't do anything, doesn't raise or lower anything. If I'm in a downward trend, I'll still go down regardless of whether I have coffee with nut pods and stevia in it. So that's just kind of interesting little factoid there, I guess. Let's look at look at this right here, and this is the oatmeal side by side here. And if you look at this, here are my steel cut oats, topped out at 131. And really, we're trying to hopefully keep everything below 140, but we still don't want sustained levels of 140, right? We want to go up and we want to come back down below 100. And this came up and started coming down. When I compared that to whole rolled oats, it did go up only by 8. It didn't go up a ton, but there was definitely a difference in how my body responded. It went up and started coming down right after it reached that peak pretty drastically, which I found very interesting. And then the plain instant oats peaked to the same height, the same level as the steel cut oats, but really dropped quickly again after that. And I thought that was pretty interesting there. And then this quick little comparison with the white rice and the brown rice, and you can see that while both kind of stick with you for quite a while, the white rice topped out at 136, brown rice topped out at 119. It kind of went down and then come back up. I didn't eat anything in between here, but it never got up above 119. Actually, I'd take that back. I think this was actually 120 on this further tip, but yeah, it didn't. I mean, it was 119 is nothing really when you think about it. And when you're talking about potentially needing some sustained energy for a little while, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? You don't get it that immediate drop down, although at some point, obviously it comes back down, but it did not dip down. One of the things you don't want to see is you don't want to see this end suddenly just too far below where you started, so to speak. And then you can see my ice cream that popped up. I guess I did. Let's take a look at that. There's the ice cream difference. Not a whole lot, right? I guess 8, a difference of 8. Both of them same amounts as far as 3.6 fluid ounces. Doesn't mean I'm going to be eating Haagen-Dazs, but if I do have a little serving of it, I'm not going to feel all that bad about it. But I do try to stay away from foods that have added sugar. So here we are, and here we are back at that week 2. We're looking at day 8. What's the preview? What is that thing that just spiked off the charts practically for me? The highest peak that I've had so far. Well, you're going to have to find out next time around. Okay, it's not going to be anything that we talk about today. I hope you found that interesting too. And in another week, we'll be reviewing week 2. And then a few weeks after that, we'll be getting all the test results back, and I'll be sharing that. Also, I'm considering getting another continuous glucose monitor to keep on doing experiments and finding out what my body does outside of this test. So if I end up doing that, I'll definitely share it with you. And I hope you've enjoyed and found this interesting. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing here, if you think it's interesting. More of this coming. And until next time, take care.